Jest czwartek, 11 września. W specjalnym obronnym wydaniu podcastu Polityki Insight wita Marek Świerczyński. Ubiegły tydzień spędziłem w Kielcach, śledząc 33. Międzynarodowy Salon Przemysłu Obronnego, który przeszedł do historii jako największy i najtłoczniejszy symbol zbrojeniowego boomu w Polsce i Europie. Przeprowadziłem tam dziesiątki rozmów i zrealizowałem tuzin nagrań, których pierwszą część z liderami polskiego sektora obronnego przedstawiłem w poprzednim odcinku specjalnym. Dziś pora na zagranicznych gości z kontraktami, planami, fabrykami czy też ambicjami w Polsce. Zbrojeniowe odrodzenie Europy to temat zajmujący wszystkich uczestników rynku, również dlatego, że właśnie pojawiają się w nim poważne europejskie pieniądze. Polska cieszy się z rekordowego wsparcia w ramach instrumentu SAFE, ale wszyscy liczą, ile i na co wydadzą kraje NATO i Unii Europejskiej ze swoich własnych budżetów, niezależnie od unijnego wsparcia. Jedną z europejskich i globalnych firm, która obserwuje te przemiany, jest Thales. Na MSPO miałem okazję rozmawiać o nich z Tonim Ajutim, wiceprezesem na Europę Północną i Centralną.
Thales is of course welcoming any initiatives that can help secure the borders and freedom of Europe. What the European Union has done in terms of SAFE and other initiatives have been hugely useful, and we're just in the middle of seeing them being executed now. The interest has been immense. There are two factors that it's trying to address. I mean, one is a rapid ramp up, and the second part is to make sure that all nations are able to increase the defense footprint that is required in order to secure the borders, wherever they may be. So I think it's a very powerful tool that the EU has come together to do. We have to remember that for the last 20 years, there has been a peace dividend, a massive peace dividend by everybody. So having a vehicle that equalizes everybody across Europe, gives everybody the same opportunity, I think is an excellent vehicle.
On the other hand, we could end up in a situation when everybody wants to do everything at the same time, which will probably bring more of the same, while arguably we need something more.
Very excellent point. Really it is. Firstly, looking back over the last 20 years, we have the foundations, and the foundations of defense equipment has been completely eradicated. There are only very few of them. So the foundations, I mean ships, I mean main battle tanks, fighter jets, air defense systems, to a very, very large degree. All of these have just been, if you like, saved away. There's very little. There's the foundation to create, first and foremost, hopefully, there is a kind of a structured approach amongst the member nations to align this. So they're not all fighting all the same places, but that there are a well-balanced approach to it across all the countries.
And this is a discussion that needs to happen between the governments.
Absolutely, yes. This is why it's very important. And when you mention everybody are interested in using their own tax money for their own nation's prosperous. This, I think, EU holds another very important step in terms of defining together where do we put different capabilities, where do we increase different skills, but also how do we combine procurements between them? And you see in the SAFE project, it's designed in that way in order to allow more to cluster together and increase the, if you like, the output of the money spent. There's a risk always because there are many nations in Europe and everybody has an interest, but I'm seeing a unity in Europe that we haven't seen for many, many years.
From your industrial perspectives, how do you see this capability division of labor happening? I mean, are there any naturals in trying to divide, you do this, you do that, etc.?
Thales, we are a multi-domestic, very international, big company that are in 60 different countries across the world. But particularly in Europe, we are present in many countries around. And we have industrial skills and capabilities in different areas where such skills and capabilities have historically evolved over time. There are other areas, such as munitions, such as main battle tanks, and so on, where the different nations already hold this kind of asset. And developing a new asset like that is not really feasible. It takes 10 to 20 years to develop a whole new technology in that way. So I think we'll find a natural way of things to balance themselves because everybody has the equal voice in EU.
Part of the equation that decision makers need to solve is that at the same time we need to rebuild those foundations that you've been talking about in terms of heavy armor, moving steel. And on the other hand, we not to lose our sight from the technology developments, which are really, really something that maybe even today we don't realize. That is the potential, for instance, of the artificial intelligence. We don't know where it leads us, actually, today. And again, the question to an industrial leader, how to combine the two.
The basics of steel, moving steel, if you like, fighter aircraft, artillery, and so on, munitions, energetics, all these things. These are capabilities that are, if you like, industrial. The new research areas, such as AI, are things that you apply to these systems to enhance their efficiency. And so I don't see one trading off the other. I see one increasing the efficiency of the others, such as jets or intelligence systems, communication systems, and so on. What I think is important is that the EU focuses on using the money to develop that in EU for EU. At the moment, we're spending almost 80% of the defense procurement budgets from outside of Europe, which is tremendous. And I think I have a number that says in the EU, there are 60% plans of procurement budget to be spent in the US. I mean, Europe has the capability. We have the companies, we have the capabilities, we have the capacity, and we have the will to increase that capacity. And we have all the nations and EU that enables us to increase that and also develop the future technology together. So I think there's a responsibility here to European industry, but also to European leaders to make sure that we can take care of ourselves as Europe and thereby act the way that is in the interest of Europe.
However, the US are also quite keen on grabbing parts of these increased defense budgets. They're not going anywhere. My impression, for instance, from the Paris Air Show this year was that they are actually expanding their presence and appetites, maybe. There is a natural conflict on the horizon, isn't there?
We need to be sure we can strike a balance on it. We cannot ignore the global stage, plus our allies as well, not to forget. NATO have been the bedrock of European security since the Second World War. Nobody is talking about forsaking the traditional chains or the traditional relationships. But what we are talking about is taking responsibility for ourselves in Europe and being able to lift that responsibility as a European Union. And I think that's important to strike that balance between the two, because having 80% of procurements outside Europe is not a balance, it's an imbalance. And so we have some way to go.
One of the battlegrounds, I would say key battlegrounds in that, is the place where we sit, Poland. Because the governments, consecutive governments, decided to place a lot of procurement outside of Europe, outside of Poland too. There were many hopes that Poland will look again into European markets, to limited success, I would say, so far. But maybe you will tell me otherwise. Maybe you are seeing some different symptoms.
I'm seeing an incredible engagement by European nations, European governments, and EU in order to engage the key nations around the Eastern Front to make sure that there is a support, focus, and priority to those countries. In the past, there has been an arm's length to supporting in order to try and balance these procurements. Poland is not unique. It is not the only country that has done many of its procurements in the US. or Korea, for that matter, or Israel. I think we are seeing something such as the security pact between France and Poland, for example, as a very positive move in the right direction. And I also think that the 45 billion euro that Poland has applied for in SAFE in Europe is a positive signal as well, that Poland is saying we want to be part of this and we want Europe to be united in this way, also across what they call the Eastern Shield. So it's very positive.
If you were to map a few areas of priority for cooperation between Thales and maybe, you know, some other European companies and the Polish industry, what would they be?
We have a 20-year or 25-year relationship already on radio production and development here in Poland. I think there's a new generation of radios coming, and I think this new generation is something that Poland and France, i.e. Thales and the companies in Poland, can definitely work towards together. I think in addition, there is on Navy, that we're Thales in the UK, together with the UK government, and that in terms of messenger program. And I think finally we are hopefully seeing a new age in space together on a European level and Poland. It would be some of the very interesting areas, at least for Thales, to work with.
This is actually very interesting that Poland has made a leap in terms of space capabilities with recent procurements. And actually with the smaller satellites and also domestically produced. What would you say is the next big thing in developing military technology for the next maybe 1 decade? There is ongoing discussion what to do with a tank. There is ongoing discussions, you know, what to do with air platforms and how to supplement them with flying robots, basically. I wonder what is in your mind.
This is one of the most fascinating questions there are these days. The key word you're using is supplementing. I remember in the 2000s and early when the West believed that they could take care of a conflict just by superior air power, take out the whole thing. They figured out at the end, we couldn't do that. You need boots on the ground. But when you need boots on the ground, you also need armor on the ground because you don't just walk in there. You're also seeing in Ukraine, that part, you still have trenches. There is the basics of warfare. Those basics will not disappear. But the great development that will happen, in my mind, in the future, are an augmentation of these in addition, like loyal wingmen, drones that add to the fighter jets that are, unmanned drones on the ground and in the air, but also in the multispectral, if you like, air, in terms of electronic warfare. All of these things are a whole new dimension to enabling a control or interception of all these assets that are networked a lot more together. This is something that definitely I'm seeing a development in and something I'll be very interested to follow up with.
Fascinating future. Thank you very much for this conversation.
Thank you for your time.
Jak sprawić, by większe fundusze przyniosły nie tylko więcej tego samego, ale i nową jakość w bazie produkcyjnej, technologiach obronnych, sile i zasięgu ognia, zdolności do powstrzymywania przeciwnika. Odwieczny dylemat dotyczy tego, czy wiele krajów powinno inwestować w jednakowe lub podobne uzbrojenie, czy każdy z osobna w to, co chce. Według Björna Bernhardta, szefa działu systemów lądowych firmy Rheinmetall, nie ma innego wyjścia, jak zjednoczyć siły kosztem obniżenia wymagań.
We see now a movement in the European Union, and I think this movement we see in the European Union brings us in the right direction, because if it sticks to a single government, is always a question of national autarky. And only if the European Union supports, you will get the larger picture and the larger corporations. This way, like we see it in the SAFE program, that you need at least 2 countries, better 3 countries, who procure the same, whatever the same means. You can decrease the amount of variance within the European forces. And only this way you get the logistic pros you would need, you will get the tactical arguments on your side, and only this way it is better for the forces and for the industry to work together.
So far, there have been a lot of multilateral cooperation programs, even on the EU level, like the PESCO, for instance, yes? But it has never produced any really significant major defense item, like, for instance, the main battle tank. If any such approach were undertaken, it was always an intergovernmental agreement. And still, the success was limited. What kind of mental change would it require to succeed with that kind of pan-European or multilateral approach?
Approaches like the PESCO didn't succeed, but of course there were approaches that succeeded. For example, if you look at the Eurofighter Typhoon, the good old Tornado, so on the aircraft area.
A400M, for instance.
Right, also.
But aviation is a bit different, isn't it, from land domain?
It is, and thus we only found flying examples. No, in the land systems domain, we didn't reach that point. I mean, we have products like the Leopard that are fielded all over Europe, but only very few countries stepped in right from the beginning. The Leopard only over the years was spread over Europe. If we want to have it now right from the beginning to procure weapon systems together, then the mindset must change from having the best national fitting solution to having a good solution that would work together in the European Union or in the NATO or in the European part of the NATO.
On the European theater in the first place, yes?
That is what I meant. And thus step like 10% back from your requirements and procure what the European industry is able to build in large amounts on a reliable basis.
In other words, we're looking into common European tank, something like that.
Common European tank, common European platform. And starting in Germany, you now see on the Leopard 2A8 basis, there is a movement. And even if you look at Panther, we are fielding now, hopefully in Italy. We are in good discussions. It has the same interfaces, for example, on tracks, on running gear, on power pack, like the Leopard 2. So there must be a communality in these vehicles.
We are sometimes focused too much on a tank, but for the tank to be functional, it needs a lot of accompanying, a lot of assisting vehicles. And actually, any mechanized or armor unit needs a lot of vehicles, a part of the tank themselves. But then again, if we have problems in uniting our requirements versus a tank, it's even worse in all those accompanying vehicles, isn't it?
No, it depends. And you will have specialized troops with specialized vehicles where it is very complicated. But in other areas of support vehicles, it is quite easy. When we look, for example, on the armored recovery, there is a necessity to close some trenches and move some obstacles, and the most important is exchange a power pack and pull out a broken tank. And thus you can do it on a platform that is reliable, affordable, and best case in service that can cover all the tanks you have in service. From my perspective, the Buffalo we are now offering to Germany and to Italy is the right solution because it can cope with all the tanks you have, for example, in Poland. I mean, Poland is the country in Europe that has the largest diversity in the main battle tank fleet, having the Abrams, the K2, and the Leopards. But the Buffalo can take care of all of them, so there is no need to diversify. And if you go the next step, for example, on a mine-breaching vehicle or an engineering vehicle, it is not important on which platform the vehicle is basing that digs your trenches and does your mine-breaching. That can be done with one platform for all the companies and all the battalions.
Can those solutions be financed from the European sources, like the SAFE instrument?
Yes, from my perspective, they can and they should be. Like I said, the Buffalo vehicle is now about to be procured from Germany again and from Italy, for example. Hopefully I don't forget another one.
So that's the two countries' requirement?
Already. Czech Republic procured Buffaloes together with their Leopard 2A4s. If they are now procuring Leopard 2A8s, they would need additional recovery vehicles. It would be the third country. Poland could be the fourth country, though there's much more than the two countries' requirement concerning the Buffalo, for example. Engineering vehicle like the Kodiak could also be set into the SAFE program. Germany has procured like 44 of them and is about to enlarge the fleet. You could get two countries together very quickly.
Can you get me a wider and longer market outlook in Europe? Because on one hand, we have these EU funding schemes, which will be a support for European industry. On the other hand, I would guess the competition is growing because, other suppliers, non-European suppliers, also are keen to grab a part of this cake. The US are not leaving Europe and they are expanding in many ways their business presence. And there's this Korean component growing, especially in where we speak in Poland.
That's true. Korea is very successful now in Poland as much as in Romania. Their approach into these countries understandable. They offer affordable solutions. If you ask for my perspective, we are talking about resilient supply chains. The question, what really happens in the worst case, and thus, of course, a common European approach, from my perspective, is the way to go to secure the logistics supply for our common forces.
Thank you. Björn Berhardt from Rheinmetall. Thank you very much.
Przenosimy się na amerykańską stronę zbrojeniowego biznesu, by porozmawiać o konkretnych decyzjach i rozwiązaniach. Jedną z najważniejszych i najciekawszych umów podpisanych ostatnio przez MON było zlecenie modernizacji polskich myśliwców F-16 w ramach MLU – Midlife Upgrade. Nick Smythe z koncernu Lockheed Martin opowiedział mi, o co chodzi w takiej modernizacji i że wcale nie musi oznaczać połowy życia naszych jastrzębi.
Ultimately, when you think of an aircraft that can exist for several decades of operations, ultimately technology is going to evolve over that period of time. And what a midlife upgrade is able to do is to take the most relevant technologies of that particular time and insert them onto an aircraft in order so it can not only just fly as it was originally delivered, but have the relevant capabilities of new aircraft that would be delivered in that same time period by taking advantage of those technologies.
Does it need to happen in mid-life of the platform?
No, I think you see different upgrades occur at different times based on different requirements. Sometimes it's an urgent operational requirement because of a certain conflict operation. Sometimes it's because of global air traffic management regulatory environments and certain notifications that are being put out. It's up to an original equipment manufacturer like Lockheed Martin to be able to find the right demand signal from a customer or an operator regarding an upgrade and whether it should be done as part of a small package, a large package, a medium package, and at what point in the life cycle.
I believe it can also depend on how often or how heavy is the platform used in operations, for instance, or how quickly this or that technology develops. With the current dynamics of technological developments, you can find your platform being quite obsolete before you even expected it.
It's a really good distinction to think about the technology side of things as well as the ability to extend the structural life of a particular platform. So for instance, on the F-16, we have a structural life extension program that gives another 4,000 hours of flying time onto the aircraft to help further extend its life.
You have witnessed many MLUs worldwide. Is there any standard to it?
It comes down to trust. You got to start early. You've got to build trust with your customer, with your operators, and you have to take that trust and architect a program that allows for readiness of aircraft while also taking certain numbers of those aircraft offline in order to upgrade them. I don't think there's one standard by which I would suggest is like that's the exact way to do it, because I think the environment in which we're living today, the geopolitical landscape is adjusting at a fairly rapid pace. So it's incumbent upon someone like Lockheed Martin, whether we're thinking about F-16s, C-130Js, F-35s, or whatever the platform, to really listen to that customer requirement in order to help them achieve what they want for credible deterrence and defense.
In case of Poland, the geopolitical landscape has changed so much that we found ourselves in a place where actually the combat capability is the priority. How does it translate to initiatives like the MLUs?
So I think about it in terms of layered capabilities, and I see a country like Poland, which has voted yes for F-35, which they'll start taking delivery of soon in country here. I look at the way we think about things for F-16 in terms of that capability that is the frontline capability for fighter aircraft in Poland today. I think about the F-A-50s that will eventually be here. And I look at that layered defense, and I think what Poland has done is very, very thoughtful and very, very high-end in terms of making sure there's layers of capability in order to meet the needs of operations on the eastern flank of NATO.
So please walk us through what will be the MLU package for the Polish F-16 in the years to come.
Letter of acceptance that was signed 3 weeks ago between the United States government and the government of Poland details an upgrade program for the Polish F-16 fleet, which will largely be accomplished here in Poland. And that's something we're very excited about in partnership with WZL2. We want Polish solutions for Poland. So that industrial capacity, that transfer of technology, know-how, is very, very important to us. Now, when those aircraft are being upgraded here, they're going to receive a new radar, the APG-83, AESA radar. They're going to receive a number of upgraded sensors and data nodes, and they're going to receive an upgraded cockpit as well as updated helmet-mounted displays.
There is a debate, or actually some people are trying to compare the changes that the F-16 will get to the fifth generation aircraft or new generation aircraft. Yes, of course, generations can be perceived differently, but is it justifiable to say that the F-16 will consume some of the fifth generation components or elements or capabilities?
I think they're complementary to one another. I think the total aircraft requirement, the total operational requirement is certainly higher than what's on order today. I think of the military value proposition of the upgraded F-16 as being the ability to go deliver new aircraft capability at a fraction of new aircraft cost. I think that's amazing. And then I think about the economic value proposition with all the transfer of technology at WZL2. So I very much look at the mix between F-35 and F-16 for a country like Poland as complementary capabilities.
You've mentioned this industrial part as the first in your description of the MLU. How important is it versus what we used to have over this, almost 20 years of F-16 system existence in Poland?
If you look at how a lot of these defense deals came together years or even decades ago, it'd be a country would sign up for a program and all the work would be done in the United States and then the aircraft would come back. Eventually it came down to, all right, well, let's do more work in country. So we would only do the first couple aircraft in the United States, fly, test them, and then find an in-country partner. Foreign country, local partner is very much inside of our DNA. Fortunately, if you look at the multi-decade presence that we've had here in Poland, we know this country very well, and this country knows Lockheed Martin very well. This is the first time we're able to do all of the fleet upgraded in country. So the first two aircraft, they'll be upgraded here. They'll fly to the United States with Polish pilots, and they'll undergo testing in the United States, but the whole program is designed to be delivered as much in Poland as possible.
But I guess this will require a lot of work to be done at WZL2 in Bydgoszcz beforehand, before they even start doing these first two sort of trial aircraft?
Yes, absolutely. And where I'm particularly excited is our ability now to take some of our technical advisors, which we'll use for technical assistance at WZL2, and employ new flight line technologies that will help upskill the workforce at WZL through a lot of digital flight line tools. One of them is called Hypersage, another which is for the maintainer at the edge to upskill themselves to very modern technologies like augmented reality, the ability to reach back for remote expertise, and then another capability called SEAM, which is for asset management of fleet planning. These are technology-enabled tools that we're going to help place into this mod program that I think ultimately keeps the cost down while accelerating the learning of the workforce.
So in a way, it's not only the upgrade of a platform, it's also the upgrade of the facility, which is designed to maintain it for many decades to come.
Yes, absolutely. To perform an F-16 modification, you've got to have a proper facility, a proper workforce, proper quality certifications, and access to the correct number of data.
How will it place the WZL-2 in Bydgoszcz on the Lockheed Martin map of industrial capabilities? During the Cold War, there have been a couple of F-16 very solid maintenance facilities across Western Europe. This didn't actually repeat after some purchases in recent decades. Are we getting back to that scheme, that there will be some kind of very robust industrial background for F-16 in Europe again?
If you're asking me which one of my children I love the most, I'm not going to tell you. However, I am going to tell you that we have a lot of children here in Europe. And when I say children, I mean like people with very, very good backgrounds in F-16. And I think what we need to have, and I'm glad you mentioned the Cold War, is a thickening of the system, a resiliency of the system. There was a world in which a lot of contractors would kind of optimize against a Toyota production model. We recognize that's actually very fragile. And so one of our themes across 21st century security is anti-fragility within our supply chain and within the defense industrial base. So bolstering the capabilities of WZL-2 to perform Viper upgrades and be familiar with the Viper configuration and its operations is absolutely critical, I think, to the security needs of Europe.
Does it create any additional business opportunities for the Polish industry, like in implementing this program, maybe getting into the supply chains of Lockheed Martin, or on a smaller scale of WZL-2s?
I would say we've had extremely positive experiences here in Poland in terms of capability, know-how, willingness to take on new challenges. It's not our job to choose winners and losers. We want to find the best value propositions. And I would say Polish industry for Lockheed Martin has a lot of very good value propositions to be part of our global supply chain.
Do you think that, over time, WZL-2 could be a supplier of services to other F-16 fleets across Europe? Maybe not those, newest ones like the ones of Slovakia and now in the coming years, Bulgaria. But there are some older aircraft also used, for instance, in Ukraine.
I won't speculate on a hypothetical, but what I will say is the skill set that will be taught at WZL-2 will be agnostic to what country is flying that particular F-16. So if it's the desire of a country to do something like that, we're making sure that we've got the right skill sets at WZL to take on additional work if it's demanded by the operators. But there again, we're going to follow the operational demand signal and not get out ahead of our customers in terms of where they want work to be accomplished.
How will it prepare the WZL-2 and other industrial entities for the arrival of fifth generation F-35s and some accompanying assets?
The great thing here is Poland's been operating these aircraft for 19 years, 20 years next year, and we're really, really looking forward to that. I think Poland's already well down its learning curve.
It would be actually great to combine the two anniversaries, like the F-16 arrival and then the arrival of F-35.
It's a fantastic idea, and I'll take that back to the team. We're very excited about the 20th anniversary. We're excited by the 150,000 flight hours that have been flown on the F-16 fleet. I don't want this interview to go by without being able to say about the tragedy of last Thursday, our condolences, our willingness to work with the government of Poland as they deem fit. Just thoughts and prayers on that tragedy.
One more thing. I believe it was last year that F-16, as well as the other aircraft, have actually crossed the 50-year landmark.
Yes.
Right? It so happens that platforms are living longer these days. Is there any border to the F-16 being used as a platform? Is there any horizon?
So I would say if you look at mid-century, you look at 2050, 25 years from now, there's still going to be over 1,000 F-16s flying around the world. There's a lot of legs on this platform, and we owe it to a fantastically designed outer mold line that's really stayed relevant with the test of time, and some fantastic engineering in terms of keeping it modern and capable
and relevant,
and relevant against a rapidly evolving threat environment. So, yeah, quarter century or beyond. That's how we see it.
Nick Smythe, Lockheed Martin, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Jednym z najważniejszych komponentów MLU jest nowy pakiet walki radioelektronicznej. To niełatwy temat, bo sprowadza się do czegoś, czego nie widać. Ale tym bardziej kusiłoby spróbować, razem z Andy Builtą z firmy L3 Harris, opowiedzieć, czym ma być tarcza Vipera. Zwłaszcza, że da się to porównać z codziennym doświadczeniem każdego z nas.
Let me put it in context of an experience that someone would have every day. You walk to a part of your house or a part of your office that doesn't have good reception for your phone. So you're either on a call or you're trying to check an email, and then all of a sudden that capability is taken away from you because you've lost that connection. It's the very same experience for all of our armed forces. If suddenly that their radios were jammed, or suddenly their systems on their aircraft stopped working because those signals, that capability was no longer available to them. It's very frustrating. It's very dangerous on the battlefront. So from an electrical magnetic perspective, there's two aspects that you really need to think about in that experience. One is to determine where the threats are. Where are these signals coming from? So that I can do something about that and get them to stop jamming me or removing my ability to operate freely in the battle space. So you have to have a detection capability that allows you to determine where these signals are coming from. The second aspect is you have to do something about it, some type of ability to either transmit a corollary signal or be able to impart some type of effect that would enable you to stop that threat coming at you. And that is essentially what would restore your cell signal in your basement or in the corner of your office where your phone always dies or drops a call. That is really what we're thinking about when we think about electronic warfare, detecting those threats and then doing something about them to return your ability to maneuver freely in the battle space.
So how do you do it while flying a fighter aircraft like the F-16?
Absolutely. So within an F-16 or any fighter aircraft, you have a system that is going to be integrated, fully integrated with the aircraft's other systems, because the electronic warfare system is one of many systems on the aircraft that operates within that electromagnetic spectrum. You have radios on the aircraft so that the aircrew can maintain contact with forces on the ground or other aircraft. You have a radar on the front of the aircraft that's transmitting and receiving signals at very high rates. So any electronic warfare system that's trying to detect threats as well as respond to them is going to have to be integrated with all those other systems to ensure that it's on a non-interference basis.
What is specific to this MLU upgrade for the F-16? Because, of course, these aircraft have been in the service with the Polish Air Force for almost 20 years. Technology has evolved significantly as we experience in our daily life. I presume that this progress must have impacted the changes with the electronics.
So I will date myself here a little bit, but my last opportunity to fly in a fighter jet in uniform was about 20 years ago. And so the electronic warfare systems of that day were very analog in nature.
As everything was.
As everything was. And there was a switch in the cockpit, and you turned it on, you turned it off. And the level of capability that it provided was, hey, something might be over here. And essentially, it wasn't information that you could act on. It was basically just a generic, hey, you might want to not go over there, or you're being jammed from over here. So it wasn't actionable.
So basically a warning system rather than actively engaging those
Absolutely. And
problems.
So it did not necessarily help in your ability to survive in the aircraft, nor did it help make you more lethal by enabling you to get closer to the places you needed to get to attack those signals. The current systems, and specifically our Viper Shield system, is a fully digital system. First off, because it's new, it's been, just like everything else electronic, the form factor has been redesigned to be much smaller and lighter than those legacy analog systems, as you would expect. And it is fully digital, which makes it software driven as opposed to hardware driven, which makes it much easier to upgrade and update. As we've seen in the last few years, that electromagnetic spectrum has become very dynamic. The threats realize they get countered, and so they move to different frequencies. And so that spectrum
and I guess there's much more going on in this spectrum.
Absolutely.
It has become
very crowded,
densely populated.
Very crowded and very dynamic. And so back when I was flying in those analog systems, it was great news for us when we got an update to our analog system maybe every 2 to 3 years. In the current battle space, you need to be able to update those systems at the pace of the threat. And the only way to be able to do that is with a software-driven system and a digital system. And that's what Viper Shield brings to the F-16 and the MLU upgrade to the F-16.
And from the pilot's perspective, because drawing conclusions from everyday life and how digital technology surrounds us, I would guess something like that is happening to the pilot in the cockpit. I mean, this shield needs to become a seamless companion to the pilot.
Absolutely. And it's about providing actionable information so that the pilot becomes more of a data fusion role in the mission, as opposed to when I was flying, you were operating the system. You were turning dials and pushing buttons, and you were manually trying to operate the system and build the general situational awareness in your mind based on what you were seeing and hearing. Now, with the new upgraded displays in the cockpit and these digital systems, you're being presented with much more polished and actionable information. So it allows you to spend your time less operating the system and more making information-based decisions.
To what degree is the system automated in the sense that it can itself react to some or maybe all threats, and what decisions are still in the hands of the pilot?
Yeah, a couple of things. It's very automated, and it does a lot of logic and prioritization of the threats, right? So it knows which threats are more concerning or more dangerous than others, and which things you need to take action on immediately, and provides different warnings and cueings and indications in the cockpit if it's something that's more dangerous than something else. You know, the ultimate authority of the pilot and the aircrew is certainly to be able to maneuver the aircraft if that should be required. But in terms of operating the system, there's very little that's required. Again, the system with its digital and advanced processing capabilities trying to present more polished and actionable information to the aircrew so that they can continue to manage the mission.
But it's still on the aircraft. Yes. Let's have a look into the future. I mean, wouldn't it be nice if those EW measures, capabilities, were actually ahead of the aircraft with the pilot in?
Yes. Well, you can imagine with all of our expertise in electronic warfare, we've been working on things just like that. So if you were to take all of this detection capability that the upgraded F-16 fleet in Poland is going to have, it will be out there every day detecting new and advanced and changing threats. Historically, that feedback loop from that detection and that absorption of energy was a very long process. As I mentioned, we'd get updates every 2 to 3 years. You would download the data, it would go back to a facility, it would be processed for a number of years, things would be developed, we might want to do this, we might want to do that. In the modern space, we are looking at solutions that would be able to take that data in much quicker time, get it off of the aircraft, get it back into a cloud-based solution, use AI to be able to process that data to look for any new threats and be able to make updates or be able to provide new techniques and transmit that back to the aircraft in as close to real time as possible. Those are the types of solutions that L3 Harris is working on from an electronic warfare perspective.
And I guess maybe because of the span of the Polish program, the Viper Shield developed and introduced today will not be the Viper Shield introduced on the Polish aircraft.
Yeah, we're very proud that Poland is the 7th nation to select Viper Shield for their F-16 fleet. The first 6 nations were all for new production programs. Poland will be the first nation to install Viper Shield as a part of an upgrade program. And absolutely, the system will continue to mature and continue to grow in its capability because it is a digital software-based system.
Thank you very much for this conversation.
Thank you.
Tarcza latająca z myśliwcem to jednak doświadczenie nielicznych. Tarcza chroniąca przed atakiem powietrznym wciąż nie jest dla nas kwestią przetrwania, ale bardzo poważnym wyzwaniem i zadaniem w modernizacji wojska i wydatkach obronnych. Ma kosztować ponad 200 miliardów złotych, więcej niż jednoroczny budżet MON. Największe doświadczenie w budowie systemów obrony powietrznej i w codziennym ich użyciu ma bez wątpienia Izrael. Na targach MSPO miałem okazję rozmawiać z doświadczonym oficerem Sił Obrony Izraela, byłym dowódcą baterii i batalionu Patriot oraz jednostek systemu Arrow, który obecnie jako rezerwista pomaga firmie Rafael rozumieć zagrożenia z powietrza. Nazwiska nie podawał, występował jako ORI.
I would like to emphasize that there is no one solution to a threat. You have to consider that there are many threats that are being evolved and changed, and sometimes your solution, as you planned, will not perform during the battle as you expected. So it's very essential to have multiple solutions and multiple layers, multi-layer defense in order to tackle new threats or new behavior of old threats that you haven't considered when you plan the system. So in our system, we usually develop a lot of methods and mechanisms in order to tackle more than one time every threat that is arriving to our country. And we found out that there are good surprises and sometimes bad surprises during the battle. So acquiring a great weapon system such as Patriot will not do you good if you will use only Patriot in your inventory. As for the differences between the weapon systems, I think that the most important questions are not what are the specifications, it's more about how fast can you learn and adjust and adopt new behaviors and new methods of using those weapon systems and make changes. When you are a small country like Israel and you have a lot of lessons learned, unfortunately, you need to be able to change and modify the weapon systems, the defense systems, daily. Sometimes from today till tomorrow. Otherwise, you will be prepared, but for the next war, not to the war that is going to happen tomorrow.
I believe the same applies to the tactics as well, yes?
That is correct. Now, for the difference between the other weapon system and the Israeli-made systems, we have managed to be very agile and very quick in making developments and changes from one night to the other day, things that cannot happen in other weapon systems that are not made in Israel, because then you will need to have to wait to the software updates, and it will be a matter of necessity from the manufacturer. He has a lot in his way to change, and let's say, for example, Poland is tackling a new threat. Maybe it's not the most important threat for that company, and they are dealing with something else in a different arena, in the China Sea, for example, and you will be
less interested in applying those changes.
Yes. Another system is business, and the Israeli system, at least for Israel, is not just business. This is our lives. So we have to be very, very fast in order to make those changes.
What was the most dynamic change that you've witnessed in your career, especially in the recent few years? Was it drones? Was it hypersonics? Was it something else?
Hypersonic is not currently a threat that we have seen, but we are foreseeing, we are expecting that to happen. So I wouldn't put the hypersonic in a first position. It will be number one.
That strike on the Ben Gurion airport, wasn't it made with hypersonic vehicle?
People tend to think that hypersonic systems are just hypersonic. But when we refer to hypersonic, we basically mean not just the speed, but the capability to maneuver in a high speed. Every ballistic missile that is flying over a certain range will be hypersonic eventually. It doesn't make it an hypersonic weapon. I mean, the Houthis from Yemen are saying that they're using hypersonic weapon. They are not wrong. It is hypersonic, but it's not in a matter that we consider. This is a theater ballistic missile, as well as the Iranian missiles. They're not hypersonic, although they are hypersonic in their speed. Although this is an unclassified interview, Israel have decided to retire the Patriot weapon system during the war and replace it with David Sling due to the results and understanding on how fast we can change and make adoptions and additions to our weapon system. And we found out that chasing after the latest version of the Patriot will not do us good. It might work for other countries, but for us, we decided after a lot of years, from 91 till 94, to retire that system and not to acquire anymore. So David Sling had replaced the Patriot.
As about the drones, because we in Poland are facing the potential threat, which is so dangerous because of its mass, because of the quantity of the objects that can be used. Ukraine is facing this almost every day. That kind of defense requires different approach and different measures.
Your question is very wise because let's say, for example, that you have a small kid that is crying. This is not a strategic problem. This is a technical problem with your child. But when you take your child to a dinner with your boss and he cries over there, now you have a strategic problem. So basically, to look at a drone as a small munition, like a fly or an insect, is very wrong, because one drone can cause you a strategic damage if it hits your weak spot. And it's not just about the mass. The mass will increase the percentage that such a damage will be caused. But enough one, so that mosquito can kill you. That germ can give you a COVID and you will die. So you have to look at the drones in a very different way. One that is penetrating your defense, if it will hit your weak spot, will cause you a colossal damage.
Some people call it a mass precision threat.
That is correct.
Which is exactly what you said, that we may be fearing the numbers, but it's actually enough that one strikes your precious location.
When you look at the Ukraine, and you mentioned Ukraine, you can also learn from the successes of the Ukraine that drone can be very dangerous, not just flying from outside the border to your country. It can fly from inside your country and cause a lot of damage, and you don't expect it to fly from close by to an airbase or something and do such a damage. So you have to consider the drone as a threat that need to be tackled also in layers. If you put, for example, system such as a drone dome system that Rafael is selling, or equivalent systems from other countries, and you put them in all kinds of places around air bases, around civilian airports, around critical infrastructure, and then you have a network of anti-drones. It's a very cheap system, and it will save you a lot of trouble if it's already been deployed in order to defend against small drones. The combinations of all those cheap systems together will give you a very strong network. It's also something that needs to be in your consideration when you're thinking about anti-drone. In the drone section, you will need to use multiple effectors. Think about jamming, but as well as hard kill and laser, and every one of them has its own unique part. Jamming is the most relevant for commercial drones, but some drones will not be jammed or act differently when they jam, and then you need to hard kill it. Sometimes you need to use lasers because you want to go from one to another. You are dealing with swarms. Laser is also being influenced by the environment, clouds, etc. So there is no one solution to everything, but a mix of them will give you the right one.
From your military perspective, is it at all possible to create a very tight, 100% effective counter-drone dome?
In one word, no. In more than one word, the defense is not the only thing that you need to consider. I mean, if you play soccer, for example, or football in the European language, you will never win by playing in your side. The best result that you can expect is 0-0. We are not expecting 0-0. So defense is again one of the layers that need to be used. You need to use intelligence, you need to attack. Also, when you are defending against drones, do not neglect the other capabilities such as passive defense. If you want to protect something, you need to put concrete, you need to put whatever. It's a part of your defense. It's a part of the solution. Do not count on one solution only.
As the old saying goes, the best way of defense is to attack the enemy.
But in basketball, you say that you win from defense. So it depends.
Drones are very dangerous not only to stationary targets or to population centers or to industry, critical infrastructure. We have seen that they have actually demonstrated their killing ability in the first place against moving targets, against armored vehicles or softer moving targets. Again, this is something that requires another type of protection and defense, one that is applicable to a vehicle, basically.
But if I will refer it to a disease such as cancer, and the solution as a chemotherapy, chemotherapy kills not just the bad cells, it's also killed the good cells. So when you think about a solution, you should find a solution that will kill the bad drones, but will let you use your own drones. So you need to figure out which system will give you the capability to understand how the sky picture look like and how to avoid shooting down your own drones because you need to use those drones. So this is something that is very hard to do. We have seen in the battlefield damages that were caused by drones. We have shot down our own drones in the past, and we learned a lot from that to come to a position today to be very, very confident that our mixture of solutions and a wise doctrine will make that solution work in order to shoot down the bad guys and let the good guys live, and protecting your moving forces. Think about a unit that deploys and they are on their way to the battlefield and being attacked constantly by those mosquitoes. I'll call them the mosquitoes. They are going to the battlefield and they're already worn. Worn by meaning they have kills, they have wounded people, they have out of order vehicles. This is not the way to show up to the battlefield when you're already worn and looking to all direction. So this is a solution that needs to be done in order to keep them fresh for the real battle that they're expecting to.
So is it possible to create a moving shield above your vehicles or your subunit?
Yes. It's not a 100%, of course, but the answer is yes. And if you're using multiple solutions, then your chances are growing increasingly high to protect your moving forces and to deal with the real battle and not with all the obstructions on the way that can cause you damage.
How you do it?
Most of our systems are able to do detection and jamming and hard kill on the move. So you have to build a smart effector that is not been influenced by the terrain or harsh terrain and can still work in that kind of environment of moving truck. It should be relatively small. It should be tough enough to deal with all the moves, but still give you a very good and clear picture about the close environment. And of course to cover it with a long range protection, because there might be flaws. When you are moving with your division, you are exposed to problems that are coming from the terrain. Sometimes you don't have good detections because of mountains and valleys, etc. The multi-layer defense also for drone is something that needs to be taken care.
And it needs to be moving with your forces as you move.
Some of the effectors needs to move with the forces, some of them need to be back and cover the entire area and move again when the division is making a progress, but still be on the, not on the front line, but be on the one click before the front line, and still have solutions for close by drones, pop-up drones.
Let me finish this conversation with a question about the Air Force. Of course, you were with the ground-based air defense, but increasingly in the recent conflicts, the Air Force is engaged in countering, I would say, mid and low tier air targets like the drones. Yes, you have experienced that in Israel as well, when the Israeli Air Force was actually the first line of defense against Iranian drones. Someone would say, well, why should my $100 million fighter go out chasing something which is not worth it?
It is a very good question. So although most of the doctrine is classified, but the answer again is a mixture. When you are expecting a huge amount of drones, you should deal with them in a matter that will let the close-by system deal with less drones when they will show up. I do agree that sometimes using a very expensive weapon system against a very low-tech weapon system is not the economic thing to do. However, from your last questions, we did understand that sometimes a small low-tech drone can cause you a strategic damage. So it's all a matter of mixture. If you're choosing all your Patriot batteries to shoot down like crazy 100 kilometers away drones, you will be effective, but you will be inefficient. you're losing the economy of the war. You have to take in your considerations a lot of things, not just the money. For example, if you will shoot a Patriot factories, and let's say that you have a limited amount of zlotys, and you can buy whatever you want, you are very rich. To manufacture a new Patriot missile will take you a couple of years or a couple of months or a couple of weeks. It will be missing from your inventory even though you have a lot of money. So you need to think about what you do and what is the right timing to use every system. That's why we are, at least in Rafael, we are using a very smart command and control center which gives advices to the operator, not just which is the best weapon system to use to tackle that drone, also to put inside the doctrine and to say, I'm going to wait or I'm not going to wait for that. And if something else will happen, I will do this or I will do that. And there are all kinds of ways to shoot down drones. It doesn't have to be kinetic ones.
All the layers that we've been talking about.
Yes.
Ori from Rafael, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Na koniec tego pakietu rozmów wracamy do Polski, choć przez Amerykę. W ostatnich kilku latach, bez wielkiego rozgłosu, w Polsce rozgościła się ostatnia z wielkich firm zbrojeniowych z USA, General Dynamics. Jej dział lądowy to producent czołgów Abrams, których Polska w sumie kupiła aż 366, a niewykluczone, że kupi więcej. Czołgi wymagają obsługi, napraw, remontów, zwłaszcza, że pod wieloma względami stanowią techniczny przełom wobec tego, co już znamy. Dlatego powstała Akademia Abrams i Centrum Wsparcia Technicznego w Poznaniu, a dookoła nich wyrosła sieć powiązań biznesowych, co w sumie składa się na nowy model obecności amerykańskiego potentata w Polsce. A tym wszystkim po cichu zarządzał wiceprezes Chris Brown.
You have demonstrated a different approach to all the others. That is, by operating quietly, you managed to create quite a significant industrial and business connections. Tell us about it.
Thank you for the question, and it's great to chat with you about an exciting program for Abrams for the Polish Army. We have, as you described, quietly established and are building out an ecosystem of companies that in total create a capability to sustain the fleet for the Polish Army of its Abrams main battle tanks. Our objective, I think, would be that these vehicles never need to leave Poland to maintain the readiness levels required for the deterrence effect that Poland is leading in NATO. Once this capability is developed, other NATO countries that operate the Abrams would see it as a logical location to have their Abrams main battle tanks repaired and serviced as well.
To have the numbers right, Poland acquired 366 MBTs in total, plus some accompanying vehicles like the Recovery, the Hercules M88. And this is the second largest NATO Abrams fleet, if I'm not mistaken, after the United States.
After the United States Army, exactly.
So presumably the needs for maintenance, repair and overhaul, as they call it, MRO, are quite big compared to other tank fleets over Europe, which may be even smaller than this one type operated by the Polish armed forces.
Correct. So tanks are expensive to own and they're expensive to operate. And so what you want to do is have the most efficient sustainment environment to make it economical to keep the tanks at a high level of readiness. Poland is uniquely positioned because of the size of their Abrams fleet, but they're also blessed. Poland is also blessed by geography and the industrial capabilities that exist in Poland to really be the center of sustaining the Abrams in the European theater. So as we see the U.S. Army position Abrams into Poland, as we see other countries adopt the Abrams, the opportunity for Poland is to contribute a significant element of deterrence, collective deterrence, back into the NATO alliance. In conjunction with Poland's thought leadership on the threat and the appropriate posture and readiness levels that they've really demonstrated a lot of leadership within the NATO alliance. Here's an example of not Poland receiving a benefit from the NATO alliance, but actually contributing a benefit back to their NATO partners.
In other words, the industrial ability to sustain is also a capability. in itself.
Correct. It's not just about the equipment, but it's about the industrial ecosystem behind it to sustain the right levels of readiness.
So you came to Poland 4 or 5 years ago?
4 years ago, yes.
And what have you seen in industry?
Well, the first thing is I was embarrassed by the lack of knowledge that I had about Polish capability, not just military capability, because once you meet Polish soldiers and you understand the Polish military history, it's extremely impressive. The second, though, is the industrial capability. I mean, I was aware to a certain extent the level of automotive and software and other high-tech capabilities that were here in Poland, but really as we started to have conversations with both private and state-owned companies, it became clear to us that really, regardless of whether we sold any vehicles to Poland, the Polish industrial base was an extremely competitive place for us to buy capability from. I would argue this is where the efficiency of business takes over, and capability finds capability, talent finds talent, and we have found a lot of talented, capable companies here in Poland.
But the first contact, did it come from the MOD? Like they indicated the Poznań industrial hub as your location, or you have selected it from some others?
And nobody told us that we had to work with the team at WZM in Poland. And they certainly have a traditional role within the Polish land forces and the Ministry of Defense, and decades of experience. In fact, I was honored to participate in the 80th birthday celebration just a few months ago, and you can see the tradition and pride that exists there. It's really about the capability and the mentality that we connected with WZM and said, this is a good partnership. We've started slow. We did not receive any direction from anybody that we had to work there because we are not under any offset agreement. Our partnership with WZM we're doing
so it's purely B2B thing.
Purely B2B. And to me, I think that's where the efficiency comes in, where business understands where the governments of the United States and Poland are going with regards to military cooperation, where Poland is going with regards to industrial development and defense participation. And then we get ahead of that and we create these solutions. We are absolutely on a path to create a world-class MRO capability in Poznań.
With some other partners as well,
Absolutely.
Yes? With a few dozen of other companies.
There's a growing number of Polish companies that are joining what we call Team Abrams. I can't show you a document that is a business-to-business document with all the different companies that are in it. It's how we behave. It's how we communicate on a volunteer basis. We share information and we say, hey, we're part of this fantastic heritage of the M1 Abrams tank, and it needs to be successful in Poland. And so certainly the traditional US companies that are part of Team Abrams, companies like Honeywell and Allison and Raytheon, these are tremendous companies that are working with us to create a capability here. And now this growing number of Polish companies, it's going to be a real defense industrial capability.
Do you have any figure in your mind, any percentage points? To what degree will Poland be able to sustain the Abrams tank fleet by itself? And to what degree will it still depend on deliveries from the United States?
There's very few countries that can do everything on their own, including the United States, including the United Kingdom, including Germany. So Poland is not alone to have some level of industrial relationship. But will the tanks ever have to leave Poland? And if our vision comes to completion, no. Will the work be done in Poland at a Polish facility with Polish workers at a Polish? Yes, like that'll happen. Will all the content of the subsystems come from Poland? No, I don't think that's reasonable, just because of the scale of localization. But a lot of the technology could be localized. And we're starting to see that activity happening right now with the subcontracts we're announcing this week.
When it happens, some tanks may actually arrive to Poland for maintenance.
And starting next year, we would anticipate the remaining tanks that are being delivered from GDLS could have content from Polish suppliers on the tank. Because they are world-class companies, world-class prices, with world-class quality that have met all the U.S. Army requirements to be accepted as a source of supply for the Abrams program. It's a great story.
And remind us, what is the worldwide fleet? So what are the potential export possibilities?
If you think of just roughly 5,000 tanks in service globally of different configurations, but roughly there's a lot of commonality across those fleets. And then I would anticipate, just based on the geopolitical situation, there will be an increasing number of countries that will either want to buy Abrams, or countries that already own Abrams will want to modernize or refurbish their existing fleets. So that creates opportunity for Polish companies as well.
Because tanks are not dead.
Tanks are not dead, unfortunately. But look, I mean, it's just the world we live in. And I wish there was a world where you didn't need tanks, but there are times where only a tank will do. And when only a tank will do, you want to have the best. And we're very fortunate to be affiliated with what we believe is the world's best tank.
Chris Brown, GTLS, thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
To był drugi odcinek specjalny podcastowego raportu po tegorocznym MSPO. Polityka Insight na pewno będzie obecna na następnych targach, a więc do usłyszenia za rok, mówi Marek Świerczyński.